So everyone's got it. You've gotten an email from a recruiter and you're like, I'm fairly sure I did not give you that information. And also, why are you talking to me? There's a bunch of different ways that recruiters do this. So I'll take you through some of the most common ones in a live, dramatic way. So the first one is you literally gave them your email address. You applied to a job ages and ages ago and you don't remember, but you did. If you apply to a job on LinkedIn through a company, it keeps your adverts there, or it keeps your applications there for quite a long time. This is my profile. I apply to my own jobs occasionally just to see in January. I might have forgotten about that, but my CV is still here. And you can get my email address and stuff there. So that's the simplest explanation. The other way, that's the simplest explanation, is that you're connected to them on LinkedIn. So you can see here, I've got Cian's details because I'm connected to him on LinkedIn. He's my boss, so he doesn't mind me sharing all his information. So those are the easiest ways, but I'm going to go into some of the more sneaky ways now. The number one tool recruiters use is probably one of these extensions. Like, there's a lot of them, but this one is called Contact Out. And you look at somebody's profile and you click the link and it brings up email addresses. So I can see I've got his Hotmail email address. That's his personal email. That's good, because you don't want to email somebody, do you want a job, at their work email address, because it's a bit weird. I've got his phone number, and I have limited credit, so I'm not going to click that. And you can see on my own profile here, it pulls my work email address because it's on my profile. And I have this kind of binary joke on my profile, so it's after pulling all of those numbers too. I don't actually know how Contact Out works. They obviously protect, excuse me, they obviously protect their information. So yeah, they're not going to tell us how they get that information, but a lot of it is just your public information with LinkedIn. So going into much more devious ways. Making sure I've got the right link there. Ooh. So if you've got somebody's GitHub account, so I've got Raphael here, that you can use a little API hack. So this is just a link. And if you put in their username into the link, and ta-da, I've got a bunch of information here. I've got like repositories he has, I've got his login, or sorry, his username, and I have email address. So I can email him now and ask him if he wants all of my jobs. If that doesn't work, if somebody has their privacy settings set so this doesn't work, you don't have to fear, you can continue. This is really like high level sneaky stuff. You can go into repositories. If you pick a repository that they've used, and then what you're looking for is the commit link. You know, I've got the right one when it's got all of this stuff at the back. And then you put in .patch, and ta-da, I've got the command line commit information. So you can see it's a bit of his README and the details in the code, and his email address is here at the top. And I can email him and say, do you want all of my jobs? After GitHub, if you still don't have somebody's information after that, well, you should kind of give up because they clearly don't want to talk to you. But if you're really like obsessed and you think this person is the greatest and they will love my job when they hear about it, there's some other things you can do. If they have a username attached to their profile, literally just Google the username. I mean, tech people are really loyal, so they tend to keep their username. And here we've got loads of stuff. We've got DeviantArt, we've got his GitHub, which isn't on his profile, so that's exciting. I can use the API thing on his GitHub. And I've got other stuff. And if you don't want to like search through all of that, if you just take some of the more common email providers and do a wee search, and ta-da, I've got his email address, which is from GitHub, but you can see it's also here from a completely different website. So yeah, that's an option. And then I can again email him. And there's OSINT software that you can use to just check absolutely everything for that email address. Like I could go poking about on Reddit to see if he posts there or something and has added his email address. So, I mean, that's all terrifying, but what can you actually do to stop this? So remember, your information is legally protected if you live in the EU because of GDPR. I can find somebody's email address, but if they didn't put that email address there for the purposes of me contacting them, then I shouldn't be doing it. It's kind of you could argue it either ways. You could say, well, I have his information and now I'm going to ask him if he wants jobs. But if they don't, then I should remove his information. But check your local data laws. Like everywhere has some sort of data protection, data privacy laws, so check that. When you get the email, ask how they got it. And yeah, they have to tell you, they should tell you. Shut down your information. If you go into GitHub, you can, in settings, to click keep my email address private. It changes the commit address to this obfuscated like alphanumeric string that is something like @github dot something. So that's no good to anyone. For anything job related or anything professional related, like your professional stuff, use a special email address so that if somebody's legitimately contacting you because you applied to a job or you gave them your contact details for that, then you'll know it's legit. But if it's like your personal email address and you're like, I'm fairly sure that the only place that exists is on like forums and GitHub, then you can be like, well, I did not give you that information. How did you get it? Stop contacting me. So yeah, those are the main ways. If that actually does sound really fun, because I have to say I'm really into OSINT, and I found it really interesting. There's this sourcing.games. It's like a CTF for recruiters. And there's a bunch of different sourcing games that you can use or you can have a look at, and it teaches you quite a lot and it's pretty fun. And so yeah, those are the main ones. It's a whistle-stop tour. I mean, realistically, recruiters are far too lazy to do any of that. It's much easier to just use the email address that's easily available to you, and if you can't find it, just move on to someone else. But you know, depending on how hard a role is, you might be really going down into corners to find someone. So that's me. So if you have questions or anything, I guess Evan will field.
Yeah. So one, that's wonderful and terrifying. In equal measure. I didn't realize there was quite that much exposed. Like I kind of knew in the back of my head that every commit to GitHub was releasing my email. This is a little scary. I'm gonna have to change my settings.
Yes.
So I was wondering how much time have you sunk into sourcing games? I imagine you're on the top leaderboards.
I'm not actually. I haven't played it in ages. I got the first 10 games or first 11 games done, but I noticed now he's up into the 30s, so I'll have to go back to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, something I was wondering. So you mentioned that like that recruiters are generally quite lazy and they'll just use whatever email they can get. But is this kind of like cold emailing beneficial?
Um,
Or is that debatable?
it's debatable. I
Mm.
mean, if you email enough people, they'll eventually reply, and or some of them will reply. A lot of the time when I'm sourcing, I am looking for somebody for the job I have in hand, but I'm also looking to make connections. So I could
Mm.
email you and be like, "Oh, I have this job," and you're like, "I don't want that. I want something else," and I'll think, "Cool, I've made a connection. They've responded to me.
Yeah.
I can." They'll think I'm a nice recruiter and they'll come to me the next time they're looking for a job.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And well, I guess this is like kind of a more this information is more generally useful than just in shielding against recruiters. I imagine like
Oh yeah,
especially with the prevalence of OSINT these days, that like you should be kind of trying to lock down as much as possible from other people as
for
well.
for
Um,
sure. There's an endless pile of tools. There's a
mm,
tool called Sherlock that if you put
okay.
in somebody's username, it searches everything
Oh, wow,
to
okay.
look for their email address. I feel, with all due respect to recruiters, it's a bit beyond them because you have to actually like go through the command line
Mm,
to install it and use it. And again, it's a lot of effort.
okay.
You
So
know,
I'm
you don't
getting
want to you don't want to put 15 minutes into looking for each email address.
yeah. I suppose I suppose it's more beneficial to those who are maybe going through verification, like for references or something. Um, yeah. Actually, do you have any other tips outside of what you mentioned, outside of like specifically for combating recruiters, just general kind of like
Literally
information
Google
security?
yourself.
Okay.
Like, oh, I'm dead. That's good to know. Um, but yeah, Google your name and Google like a couple of associated things
Mm,
to see just what comes up.
okay.
Again, my stuff is pretty locked down because I've run all of this on myself, and I was finding
Mm,
stuff like my old email address buried in mailing lists from 10 years ago.
yeah. I suppose I'm going to have to do the 30 Rock and go Google myself in my office.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We're out of time for questions at the moment. Up next, we've got Rain Leander, who will be talking about putting on your own.